The night the radio wouldn't stop calling. Wyoming, 1997. At 2:13 a.m. on February 6, 1997, a Wyoming emergency dispatcher answered a phone call from a number that had been disconnected for over 30 years. The voice on the other end whispered, "We didn't make it out." Then the line went dead. That number belonged to a remote fire lookout tower that burned down in 1964. There was no phone, no power, no reason for any signal to exist. But the call was real, recorded, logged, and it reopened one of the strangest disappearance cases in American history. On August 19, 1964, 3 wildfire observers were assigned to Black Hollow Lookout, a wooden tower perched on a ridgeline deep in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming. Their names were Elliot Crane, Jonah Myers, and Rebecca Shaw. The tower had a single landline, a shortwave radio, and no road access, only a narrow 4-mile hiking trail through steep forest. At 7:41 p.m., Crane radioed base and said a storm was rolling in from the west and visibility was dropping fast. At 8:09 p.m., the final transmission came through. Crane said, "There's something moving below the ridgeline, and it's not weather." That was the last anyone ever heard from them. The next morning, smoke was visible from the ridge. By the time forest crews reached the site, the tower had burned almost completely to the ground. There were no lightning strikes reported in the area, no nearby fires, and no signs of accelerants. Even stranger, no human remains were found, no clothing, no equipment, no footprints leading away from the site, just ash, twisted metal, and the melted remains of a radio console still locked in the communication position. The official report listed the crew as missing and presumed eliminated in a fire-related incident. The case was quietly closed by the end of that year, until 33 years later. On February 6, 1997, at exactly 2:13 a.m., a dispatcher at the Johnson County Emergency Center received an incoming call from a rural landline that had been disconnected since 1964. Caller ID read Black Hollow Lookout. The dispatcher later described the voice as male, slow, calm, and tired, like someone who had been speaking for a long time without being heard. The caller said only one sentence, "We didn't make it out." Then the line disconnected. No static, no interference, just silence. Phone company records confirmed the line was not physically connected to anything. The call should not have been possible. Authorities reopened the 1964 disappearance. When investigators returned to the site, they found something new. A metal pole had been driven into the ground exactly where the tower's foundation once stood. Attached to it was a weather-resistant clipboard. Inside was a single sheet of paper written in pencil. The handwriting matched Elliot Crane's archive service records. The message read, "We stayed too long." Beneath it, another line said, "It learned our signal." The paper showed no signs of aging, no yellowing, no water damage, as if it had been placed recently. 2 weeks after the call, radio operators across northern Wyoming began reporting something strange. Shortwave radios were picking up a signal at 3:17 a.m. every night. It wasn't words, it wasn't music. It was a repeating pattern, 3 long tones, 2 short tones, 1 long tone. Signal analysts realized something unsettling. That pattern matched the old fire tower emergency broadcast code for personnel missing, assistance required, a code that hadn't been used since the 1960s, and it was being transmitted from Black Hollow's exact coordinates. On March 4, 1997, a 5-person investigation team was sent to the site to trace the signal. 2 Forest Service officers, 1 communications engineer, 1 state investigator, and 1 search specialist. They arrived at base camp at 3:48 p.m. and established radio contact. At 5:02 p.m., the engineer reported that the signal source was underground, not atmospheric. At 5:11 p.m., the search specialist said there was a structure there that wasn't on any maps. Dispatch asked for clarification. No response. At 5:14 p.m., the final transmission came through. "It's not burned. It's beneath." Then silence. Search teams were deployed immediately. When they reached the location the next morning, the site was empty. No team, no camp, no equipment, no footprints. Even more disturbing, the metal pole and clipboard found earlier were gone. In their place was a shallow depression in the ground, as if something heavy had been removed. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in. What it detected shocked investigators. Below the site, nearly 40 feet underground, was a hollow space the exact size and shape of the original tower. But the space was empty. No structure, no remains. Just an impression, as if something once stood there and was removed. On March 11, 1997, exactly 1 week after the team vanished, the emergency center received another call. Same number, same disconnected line, same time, 2:13 a.m. This time, the voice said, "You came too late." Then after a pause, "It learned you too." The call lasted just over 6 seconds. Again, no trace. Residents near the Bighorn foothills began reporting strange activity. Power flickers without storms, radios turning on by themselves at night, phones ringing once and then stopping. Strange tones heard in the forest, especially after midnight. One hiker reported finding a burned notebook buried under pine needles near the site. Inside were hand-drawn diagrams of a radio tower, but the structure was wrong. Too tall, too narrow. Beneath it was a second tower, inverted, extending downward. At the bottom of the drawing were the words, "It mirrors what it hears." Officials publicly dismissed the calls as hoaxes, but internal documents later leaked told a different story. One classified memo dated March 20th, 1997, stated that the signal origin could not be identified by conventional means, that a ground-based source was confirmed but physically inaccessible, and that field investigations should be terminated. Another note stated that audio analysis confirmed voice characteristics consistent with archived recordings of Elliot Crane from 1964. Crane had been missing for 33 years. On April 2nd, 1997, the final known signal was recorded. This time it wasn't a call, it was a broadcast. Shortwave, emergency ban, wide frequency range. The message was faint but clear. "We're still here. We're not where we were. It's still listening." Then the signal ended, and Black Hollow went silent forever. The case remains unsolved. The site is closed to the public. No structure exists on the ridge. No tower, no station, no equipment. But locals say if you hike that trail at night, especially during storms, your phone may lose signal. And if you're unlucky, it might ring anyway, from a number that no longer exists. And if you answer, you might hear someone breathing, waiting, listening, learning your signal. If the signal is still coming from somewhere out there, then who or what could still be listening?